For decades, Japan has been an enigma to economists, a prosperous, highly educated nation stuck in a deflationary rut. Its people clung to an entrenched mindset of falling prices and stagnant wages, like a life raft in rough economic seas. But something seismic is happening. The aftershocks of the pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine appear to have shaken Japan from its long deflationary doldrums. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida recently proclaimed that Japan has achieved a once-in-a-lifetime historic opportunity to exit from deflation. Those aren't just rhetorical flourishes from an overly optimistic politician. The evidence is piling up that Japan may finally be becoming that most normal of modern economies, one where companies raise prices, workers demand higher wages, and a virtuous cycle of rising prosperity takes hold. This unfamiliar situation is rattling nerves. We have obtained a once-in-a-lifetime historic opportunity to exit from deflation, Kishida emphasized. We are going to make sure that a positive mindset that will see rising wages as the norm will be firmly established across the entire society. It's easy to be skeptical. After all, Japan's multi-decade bout with deflation and economic malaise has been so deeply ingrained that Nobel laureate Simon Kuznets jokingly grouped the world's economies into 4 categories: underdeveloped, developed, Argentina, and Japan. From the 1960s through the 1990s, Japan's stratospheric growth put it in a category unto itself one Kuznets couldn't neatly categorize. Then after its asset bubble burst in the early 1990s, the opposite happened. Japan stood apart from other advanced nations, uniquely afflicted by persistent price declines, minuscule interest rates, and lethargic wage growth. Starting in the late 1990s, Japan became an outlier in another way. As a writer for the Financial Times put it, it was the only advanced economy in the world where inflation, interest rates, and wage growth all remained near zero, or in some cases below it. Now the economic winds may finally be shifting, carrying the brisk scent of something new. Hard data points are stacking up to suggest Japan could rejoin the ranks of normal, healthy economies with moderate inflation and rising wages. The numbers are hard to ignore. After 2 years of modest inflation readings above 2%, core inflation hit 2.8% in February. Big companies agreed to raise wages over 5% on average in this spring's Shunto negotiations, the highest hike since 1991. After stagnating for over 3 decades, the Nikkei stock index finally broke through to new highs in February, surpassing its bubble-era peak from 34 years ago. Perhaps most critically, the Bank of Japan ended its negative interest rate policy in March, abandoning one of its most unorthodox monetary experiments. For the first time since 2007, borrowing costs are edging higher. Following 2 years of mild inflation, the virtuous cycle between rising wages and prices began to emerge and the BOJ started to raise interest rates, observed Tsutomu Watanabe, an economist at the University of Tokyo. Taken together, these developments have BOJ chief Kazuo Ueda feeling optimistic that Japan can carry out a normal monetary policy, allowing the economy to reach a sweet spot. As Ueda put it, people should be living without being conscious of the BOJ's existence. We are now at a transition period where we might be able to shift to that kind of a situation if things go well. Of course, a few positive data points don't erase decades of stagnation overnight. Plenty of skeptics remain. Some economists question whether the statistics capture the full, messy reality on the ground. Others wonder if isolated wage hikes at big companies will truly catalyze a self-sustaining cycle of rising wages and prices across the entire economy. Significant evidence is yet to be seen in terms of real wage rises, ability of households to weather broader price rises, and shifts in consumption, savings, and investment choices that would signal that the virtuous circle is here to stay, cautions Naomi Fink, chief strategist at Nikko Asset Management. Decades of deflation psychology won't disappear in the blink of an eye. The demographic challenges are still daunting, with an aging, shrinking population. Debt levels remain extremely high. And with China now battling deflation itself, global economic headwinds could quickly undermine Japan's progress. As the broader mindset is starting to change, the number of people who don't want things to change will be relatively large, Watanabe concedes. These are all valid concerns. But we shouldn't ignore the tantalizing hints of a new reality taking shape. Across Japanese society, there are stirrings of a great psychological transition. It's visible in the economic data, yes, but also in the behaviors and attitudes of corporations and workers. Major companies like Asahi are finally feeling emboldened to raise prices, something they avoided for years. "We were quite encouraged," said Asahi CEO Atsushi Katsuki. Ultimately, consumers are willing to pay the price if they see value. On the labor front, employee confidence is strengthening as companies fiercely compete for workers amid staff shortages. After staying quiescent for decades, unions are demanding real wage hikes, with unusual militancy. "We feel that we need to achieve a society where 2% inflation and 3% wage increases will always be achieved," insists Katahiro Yasukochi, head of a major manufacturing labor group. Faint signs of an investing mindset shift are even detectable among Japanese households, who for years avoided stocks as prices fell, rationally parking their wealth in low-risk savings accounts instead. But with inflation now eroding the real value of their cash hoards, Japanese individuals are opening investing accounts in record numbers and plowing billions into equities. Monetary policy has normalized, deflation appears to have ended, wages are rising again, and we're in the middle of a massive value unlock program, says Goldman Sachs strategist Bruce Kirk. So there are a lot of new factors in play at the moment. Maybe, just maybe, Japan is transcending its status as an economic aberration and reverting to the norm. For a nation of industrious, diligent people, normalcy sounds pretty enriching.